Welcome to Rewind 2017, a CNN Philippines special presentation. I'm Pinky Webb.
And I'm Ruth Cabal. All throughout this hour, we will revisit the stories that define the past 12 months.
And when we talk about big stories, one of the biggest stories this year would have to be the Marawi siege, Ruth, that happened in May, on May 23. Until the end of the year, it was talked about because Congress responded to President Rodrigo Duterte's request to extend martial law to 1 more year in Mindanao. But when it happened in May 23, Ruth, we covered that. We broke that on air.
Hindi natin binitawan yung storya na yan. Talagang the whole day, day one, we were there, we were on air kasi we wanted to know the real situation on the ground.
And when you talk about the real situation, to be very frank about it, we were trying to get as many people on air as possible because what we wanted to know was exactly what was going on. It's something we wanted to let you know. So, subsequently, one of our correspondents, George Cahiles, pinadala natin kaagad doon. George, saan ka ba una napunta? Was it even difficult to make it there to Marawi?
Well, it was a very difficult situation because when we arrived in Iligan City, day 2, that's roughly 30 kilometers away from Marawi City, nakita natin kaagad yung chaos doon sa ground. People were desperately wanting to leave the area because of the ongoing crisis, ongoing firefight in Marawi City. So, sobrang traffic na doon sa lugar.
Oo.
And nakita natin yung checkpoints, they're very strict about it. And kilo-kilometro talaga yung haba ng mga sasakyan.
Naalala ko yun because you were sending us reports, live reports all the time. And yung 30 kilometers na yun took 8 hours, 9 hours, even 12 hours, no, at that time. And what were you expecting, though, papunta doon?
Well, initially, the idea is that, you know, people are really into in a very desperate situation. Nakita naman natin talaga on the ground. They're very determined to leave the area. Susubukan natin silang kausapin, pero parang tahimik sila eh. Ayaw nilang makipag-usap, or kung may nagsasalita man, parang may ISIS doon sa lugar. Ganun lang. Simple lang, wala nang iba pang detalye. Determined silang makaalis doon sa lugar. Until the point nga na dumating kami sa Marawi City around gabi na yon, gabi na, mga 7, 8 o'clock.
Ng May 24.
Oo. At magulo talaga yung sitwasyon, kaya lang ang problema, kailangan natin makapagbato ng signal, ng video sa ground.
Tama.
So bumalik na kami kaagad ng Iligan City.
Let's not forget also na during that time, President Duterte was in Russia when the Marawi crisis broke out. Pero he cut short his trip, he went back to the Philippines and declared martial law.
The President has called me and asked me to announce that as of 10 p.m. Manila time, he has already declared martial law for the entire island of Mindanao. Esdes Guevara has clarified that this is possible on the grounds of existence of rebellion because of what is happening in Mindanao.
And more on the situation on Ground Zero, David, our senior correspondent David Santos was there
Also
also.
was there.
I came in sa second week na, no? In the first few days, medyo everybody was struggling to put a picture kung sino ba yung nasa likod ng itong pag-atake na to. I came in at second week wherein the focus now was more on the evacuees. Kasi remember, more than 500,000 residents of Marawi had to flee, as George pointed out. So parang doon nabigyan din ng focus because for the first past days, di ba, ang focus was trying to identify sino itong mga maote na to.
Correct.
Who are these people?
Sino yung nasa likod ng grupong to? Because as I mentioned a while ago, di ba, yung unang video natin came from, well, a netizen, ano, na may nakita tayo, that was very telling when we saw those men walking doon sa daan with high-powered firearms. So I remember our chief correspondent, Kian was even asking, you know, of course, we had to determine sino ba sila kasi doon talaga naman mag-uumpisa. Sino tong mga to at is this a terrorist act? Parang ganon.
Exactly. Actually, yung day 3, morning, dumating kami sa Marawi, we even saw 2 armed men, no? Na hindi naman sundalo, hindi naman police. So, malapit lang yun eh. Malapit lang yung area doon sa Kapitolyo ng Marawi, ng Lanao del Sur. Magulo yung sitwasyon. So we don't know what's going to happen. So kami mga journalists, magkakasama lang kami para lang, just somehow maging safe and magkakasama
Magtulungan na rin kayo.
Tapos meron ding mga dineclare na safe zone, David, di ba?
Right.
Pero nakakagulat kasi kahit sa safe zone, may mga stray bullets, may mga tinatamaan.
Exactly. Siguro to add up to that discussion kanina, no? It was important to determine kung sino mga ito because it also will define how our military will be responding to the situation. Because initially, everybody were thinking, baka pwedeng tatagal ito ng 1 week or the most 2 weeks. But it dragged on 4 months.
Ang
And
dami-dami.
yun nga, nandun yung issue ng safety, not only for the responders, yung mga police and the military, but even journalists covering.
In fact, nararamdaman mo, kasi pag makausap mo yung, let's say, the AFP spokesperson at tanongin mo kailan ito matatapos, dahil yun naman talaga yung isa sa mga paulit na tanong. Alam mo, minsan ayaw na talaga nila sagutin dahil who can tell? Diba? Ang hirap din talaga to determine because they never thought, how did they call this? Urban warfare, something that the soldiers were not used to.
Exactly. Kaya nga, kahit si Secretary Lorenzana, inamin niya na nakuryente siya several times. No? Na yung information from the ground, hindi nagmamatch doon sa nakukuha niya. So, yung deadlines, hindi natin masabi kung kailan ba talaga matatapos yung Marawi crisis.
So, puntahan natin yung
mismong pagtatapos
Liberation.
na. We're saying, kailan matatapos? And then, we got to that point. Can you tell us about it, George? You were there.
They were both there.
And
We
also
were
David
both
was there.
there. We
Okay.
saw the Liberation Day. Well, it's a symbolic Liberation Day.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby declare Marawi City liberated from the terrorist influence that marks the beginning of rehabilitation of the city.
Absolute breaking news also for us dahil tanda-tanda ko din yun dahil nakita ko din. Meron ka pang video ata ng sarili mong cellphone video, George. So after that is we have to move forward to rebuilding. Now, how long can this take? What are you seeing that could be the major challenges, David?
Yung challenge, syempre, 500,000 people leaving Marawi, how do you bring them back again? Considering so much devastation, we were given one of very few chances to go around Marawi. We should remember na medyo mahigpit pa rin ang AFP, even up to this time as we speak, na ayaw nilang magpapasok ng mga civilians sa tinatawag nilang main battle area because it's too dangerous, baka may mga remnants pa ng Maute. So we got that very limited chance to see around. And the devastation was so massive that parang totally unimaginable. Now, ang challenge there, as Pinky was asking, kung paano mo ngayon ibabalik yung 500,000 na tao na umalis.
And back to their normal lives.
Back to
And the
their
government
normal
is also saying the initial amount for rebuilding could be up to 50 billion pesos.
Initially, ang proposal was of around 5 to 10 billion because yun lang ang kaya ng government.
Mas
Because
tumaki
how do you bring that much money? At kailangan lang itawid ang 2017 to 2018 because the budget will be available by 2018.
Tama. Every year, kailangan sila maglagay ng budget, maglaan ng budget on with regards to the rehabilitation of Marawi. When we return, the President's war on drugs takes front and center of this administration, and it's a priority, obviously, from President Rodrigo Duterte because during the campaign, yan ang sinabi ng Presidente. Remember, he said 3 to 6 months. So, with that, came a lot of challenges and a lot of criticisms as well.
This is Rewind 2017. Stay with us here on CNN Philippines.
Welcome back to Rewind 2017, a CNN Philippines special presentation.
We are revisiting the stories that defined 2017.
Well, the killing of 17-year-old Kian Delos Santos sparked public outrage. It put a young face to the government's aggressive campaign against drugs.
And it also led the government to pause and reevaluate its strategy in the fight against illegal drugs. During Kian's funeral, we saw thousands join the protest rally, apparently against President Duterte's anti-drug policy. So we see how people reacted to this story. We have George Kahila still with us, and also our senior correspondent, Ina Andolong, who regularly covers the president. So tell us, where are we on the war against drugs?
Well, the case of Kian is one of the rare instances where we get to hear the president say or admit that, yeah, posibleng ang may pagkakamali yung police in this particular anti-drug operation. Because we're used to hearing him defend policemen, saying that no matter what they do, no matter how many people they end up killing, they will not go to jail. But in this case, dito kay Kian, he did say that after watching the video, he called General Bato de la Rosa right away and told him na arestuhin mo yan. And right now, George, right, I think these 4
Yung video
policemen...
kasi, I think that was really the highlight of this Kian De Los Santos, killing. Because sinabi ng police, nanlaban.
Oo.
Di ba?
Kasi ito, nagkaroon ng ebidensya ngayon na publicly na-release that 2 policemen dragging a young man papunta doon sa area kung saan pinatay si Kian De Los Santos. And that very moment na yung mga tao, very cooperative sila na hindi. Si Kian yung bit-bit nila. Even though yung mga police, ang excuse nila, asset daw nila yung bit-bit. Nakita natin ngayon na nagkaroon ng public outrage dito sa kasong ito dahil nga totoo na pinapatay yung mga ganitong klaseng bata na napagbintangan. Well, that's something na kailangan pa rin
Nagkaroon ng
patunayan.
question doon sa nanlaban. Ito dahil sa video na to, dahil nakita, sinabi nila nanlaban, pero it didn't seem like nanlaban si Kian dito sa video. Remember, nasa basketball court yun, di ba? Meron pa mga testigo doon. Merong mga nagbabasketball nung dumaan si Kian, supposed to be with 2 men.
And there were witnesses who really identified the police officers involved.
That's true. Kaya ito nga mga witnesses na ito ngayon, hawak na ng Department of Justice under the Witness Protection Program because, you're fighting against policemen in your area. So, kahit yung pamilya ni Kian de los Santos, nandun na rin sila ngayon sa WPP. So, they're protected by this government.
Now, jumping off from the family naman of Kian de los Santos, they also met with President Duterte. The President assured them that justice will be served, the policemen will be held liable. But looking at the bigger picture, yung pinapoint out kanina ni Ruth, the outrage or the discussion that happened after Kian, even the President, apparently, medyo nag-change talaga yung strategy niya. 2 months later, he came out with a memorandum saying na gusto niya, PDEA na lang daw ang sole agency to lead anti-drug operations. But I have to point out, when the President made this announcement, I was there, he sounded a bit sarcastic because, of course, he was responding to human rights criticism, saying, sige, PDEA na lang, yan ang gusto nyo, diba?
Gumagano'n pa nga siya sa kanila.
Yeah. Parang he sounded a bit sarcastic because he was insisting or implying that, sige, tignan natin kung kakayanin ng PDEA yan. And then now, 2 months later, again, earlier this month, December, binalik na naman niya. He said, sige,
binalik ng PNP.
Binalik ang PNP. Now the PNP will play a role again.
Supporting role lang daw
in
sila.
anti-drug operations. And he's saying that even with PDEA at the lead, it seems the drug problem is not being resolved, or it's not, the situation basically is not improving. A question dyan, George, ano ang basis niya for saying
Exactly.
na hindi nag-improve?
Actually, aminado naman yung PDEA that they cannot do it alone. Very limited yung resources ng PDEA. But of course, they said na nag-step up naman yung efforts nila when it comes to their anti-illegal drugs operations. Pero sa level naman ng police, di ba? Since babalik na sila, there's a promise naman that they will be more cautious of their actions. So may admission din na talaga nagkamali sila in the past. And citing the case of Kian de los Santos. Now, ito lang, konting data lang kasi doon sa number of persons killed during legitimate police operations, there are around 4,000 deaths.
Diba 3,806 ata yung huli nila?
Exactly. So from that number, ang mapapansin nyo, sa PNP-led operations, there were around 3,933 killed. While sa PDEA, sa PDEA, 34 lang. And during that time, na PDEA lang yung may hawak ng war on drugs, isang suspect lang yung napatay nila during the war on drugs. So ngayon, sabi ng PNP, we will try our best na maging less bloody itong participation nila ulit. They will use body cams among others. So, titingnan natin kasi yung budget for body cams darating pa yan next year.
Pero yung sinasabi nyo nga na a year and a half into the war on drugs, nasa na tayo? Are we even closer or losing or winning yung pagsugpo talaga dun sa problema ng illegal na droga?
Pero di ba may sinasabi si Pangulong
I
Duterte?
guess that will depend sinong tatanungin mo.
And what I mean,
One
ano
more year.
magiging basis nito? Is it the number of people killed?
Number of those in rehabilitation
or
centers?
the amount of drugs seized? Kasi the PDEA and PNP would have different data for that. But definitely, over the past few weeks, ang position naman ni Pangulo after he ordered the PNP back in the drug war, he said, I don't care anymore if you say that I'm a killer. We don't know if that means, or he's already hinting that more killings will happen with the PNP.
And let's not
back in
forget,
the drug war
during the
again.
Senate investigation, General Ronald De La Rosa, ilang beses din siya nagpakita doon sa investigation ng Senado on the death of Kian, along with others, no? Kasi nagtuloy-tuloy yan.
Masakit. Masakit. Magpakamatay kami para sa inosente tao, hindi. Pagkahirap naman sabihin yun na palisi na malawakang pagpatay I am not si PNP. Nandyan yung Lord. Nandyan si Lord. Nakikita, alam niya. I am willing to go back to Davao. Go home. Pag ma-prove mo yan, Your Honor. Masama yung sabihin mo ganun eh. Dapat, you should be careful.
So, yun yung naluha, he became very emotional, si General Bato de la Rosa. And I remember it was Senator Mig Zubiri na siya atay nakapag-udyok nun yung emotional side ni General Bato.
Well, that kasi, parang gusto lang nilang patunayan na walang state-sponsored killing. But then again, it's another issue, no? Kung meron ba talaga or wala. But siguro ang kailangan ma-resolve ba talaga ngayon ng PNP ngayon is nasaan na ba talaga tayo sa war on drugs?
No, but Ina, remember the President also said that he asked for another year.
Yes,
Very
one
recently.
more year. Hindi natin alam if this will change again. But definitely, this will be another period that we especially will be watching out for if indeed the changes that has happened over the past year, kung magiging effective siya this next year.
And aside from that, of course, there was another tragic death of a young man that dominated the headlines. This is, of course, Atio Castillo. He was a law student at the University of Santo Tomas.
Okay, we'll take a closer look at his story, the investigation into his death, the testimonies of his fratmates in the Aegis Juris Fraternity, and of course, the plea for justice by his parents. Keep it here on CNN Philippines, a special presentation.
Welcome back to a CNN Philippines special presentation. This is Rewind 2017.
We're taking you back to the biggest stories of 2017.
One of them, of course, Ruth, was the death of Atio Castillo. You remember that when this first came out, we saw the parents of Atio, both father and mother, but it was really the father who really showed so much devastation dun sa pagkamatay ng anak niya.
Suko na nila kung sino yung mga gumawa niyan. Suko na nila.
Maawa na sila sa amin. Pakita na nila kung sino. We have naman the names eh. Ni-recruit naman siya eh. Hindi naman siya sumali.
Ayaw naman niya sumali. Because sabi ko,
he was invited to join.
And this has evolved into so many issues as, of course, number one, hazing, number two, who was involved, and even UST as a school, obviously, and its dean, napasama rin, of course, dito sa controversy.
Kumbaga, hindi lang yung emosyon yung nakikita natin. Even nakarating nga ito sa Senado and the Senate even investigated. We have with us Cleve Arguelles, a political scientist. He'll be joining us for the discussion on this. Una muna, Cleve, we have an anti-hazing law, and then our CNN research says that since the law was passed, 18 hazing deaths were recorded. So, bakit ganon? Bakit patuloy na nangyayari yan? At saka, ba't ang dami pa rin sumasali sa mga frats, sa mga sorority?
Yes, with the death of Atio, the anti-hazing law is back into the spotlight. So 22 years after it was enacted, we really see that there are problems in the anti-hazing law. Foremost is that hazing is not really prohibited in the anti-hazing law. It's only regulated. So a lot of people think that hazing is prohibited in universities, but the anti-hazing law says that it's only regulated. So they can still perform, for example, activities causing humiliation to the neophytes, for example, and hazing will only be a criminal act if it results to physical injury or to death. So it only becomes criminal once it gets out of the it gets to death. So it's in a very worrying position. So a lot of people do not understand that for fraternities, sororities, and similar organizations, hazing is an age-old tradition involving earning of trust. That supposedly you have to undergo
and
personal
loyalty.
Yes, you have to undergo personal humiliation, extreme stress. For
Just
you
to prove
be able
yourself,
to prove
parang
your
ganon.
loyalty
Oo,
and that
sabi
you're worthy of being
yan ba yung
part of it.
brotherhood? Nakita natin yung ibang mga frat members na. But it took a long time before they came out. Di ba you covered yung isa dun sa mga
Si
suspects?
John Paul Solano, siya yung
oo.
isa sa unang lumabas. Because let's go back to this. We saw the parents. And after that, hindi na talaga nagpa-interview yung mga magulang. Naiwan na lang sila doon sa wake, and we were just covering it from outside the wake, no? And then eventually, one person who's supposed to have brought the body of Atio Castillo to the hospital, he's the one that showed up, and nagpakita siya he was turned over to Senator Ping Lacson, CNN Philippines, of course, broke that as well. And after that, tinurn over ni Senator Ping sa MPD, si John Paul Solano. And then, this is where eventually we saw the Senate investigation that nakaharap ng parents ni Atio, supposed to be those members of the Aegis Juris Fraternity who were supposedly part of that frat night na namatay nga itong si Atio Castillo.
And the investigators were also saying na mukhang possibly may cover-up dun sa the whole thing, no? But moving forward, Cleve, ano ba yung pwede nating amendments, di ba? Yun din yung sinasabi ng mga senador dun sa mga hearing.
Yeah, one of the biggest things na gustong i-amend sa anti-hazing law is to make hazing itself as a criminal act, to prohibit it. So the language of the law should be changed. Na siya
Hindi
mismo
regulate.
hindi lang regulated. So that our universities, hindi na kailangan na to enforce this very vague law that, you know, they have to regulate it. But it's prohibited. And one of the things na important din dito is that the victim is a law student. And when the law was passed, it was also a law student, no? Yung Ateneo law student in 1991. So it's also worrying that our law students are engaging in these kinds of activities that supposedly will uphold the rule of law.
So the senators were, you know, in the thick of it all during the hearing, and I remember some of them saying, ganito ba ang itinuturo sa iyo? Sa inyo, estudyante pa lang kayo, tapos ito na nangyari.
I think that was Senator Grace Poe.
Also saying that. Of course, you know, apart from that, towards the last part of the year, Ruth, meron din namang pinaghandaan ng Pilipinas na supposed to be something to be proud of. In fact, when you talk to a lot of the analysts, they'll say that the Philippines hosted the ASEAN chairmanship quite well, and they were very proud of it this year.
And coincidentally, kasi 50th founding anniversary din ng ASEAN, so it's not just the formal summit per se. And David Santos again is joining us to talk about the ASEAN summit. David, ano ba tingin mo yung naging highlights nitong ASEAN Summit?
Alam mo, it was a one-year preparation since it was handed over to us, the chairmanship to President Duterte in Laos in 2016. And a lot of preparations were made and meetings were held in different parts of the country. But of course, pinak-highlight yung summit meetings na ginawa dito sa Manila with wherein hindi lang yung mga ASEAN leaders na nandito, kasama rin yung mga dialogue partners natin, including US as well as representatives from China and Russia. Siyempre, pinaka-highlight dito, Ruth and Pinky, yung pinupush ng chairman, which is integration, the integration among ASEAN members.
But we were also at the same time criticized by some groups, diba, Cleve? Kasi marami daw hindi na bring up a very important issues, South China Sea.
Yes. So may mga victories tayo in the ASEAN hosting, but also there are some disappointments, especially in the area of human rights situation, not only in the Philippines but also in the entire Southeast Asia, diba? So a lot of human rights advocates are expecting that the issue of, for example, the Rohingya in the Myanmar, the war on drugs in the Philippines will also be discussed by the ASEAN leaders. But it wasn't.
Because no less than President Duterte, who is the chairman, who is the host, medyo may
reservation
siya sa issue when it comes to human rights.
Kaya it would have been a surprise had the tide turned the other way, di ba? But also it was I mean, let's be frank about it. Yung pagdating din naman nila, yung kanilang mga eroplano, sinubaybayan din yan ng mga tao, especially yung pagdating ng world leaders. Number one na sigurado dyan would be the US President.
Several times ka, di ba, nakita natin na parang magiliw, mag-usap yung dalawang leaders. Anong observation mo? Tapos tinatawag pa niyang
body language,
Rodrigo, ang ating
bromance
presidente.
nga ang tawag nila. It was a budding bromance between President Duterte and President Trump. No? Sa dinner lang, kinantahan pa ni Presidente si Duterte, si President Trump, as well as the other guests. So, nandun yung nakikita nating parang a special level of alliance between the Philippines. So in fact, because of that, na-put into spotlight, international spotlight, lalo si Presidente Duterte because of this ties with President Trump.
Why are we so concerned about it? Because of the experience of the kind of relationship or walang relationship that the President had with the former US President. So talagang all eyes were glued. Especially Ruth, nandun ka din, di ba? You were there.
Nakita rin natin yung gala dinner, I covered that nung the first, that was a Sunday before the formal summit. No? Tapos nakita natin na nakabarong lahat ng mga leaders. And then also yung traditional tinatawag na handshake when the leaders yung medyo
Ganon.
sinubukan naming may picture tayo mga reporters, hindi mo alam
Ikaw,
ano ba,
si David,
left over,
sino,
right,
si
right over,
Ina, si
when
Claire.
you covered it.
Annually na yata nagiging issue yan. Binabantayan yung kanilang sinusuot, na yung kung saan ang host country, at yung paggawa ng gano'n. Medyo for a short moment, naging katawa-tawa yung paano nag-react. Especially si President Trump was struggling to find paano ba gagawin yung...
Right over left ba? Or left over right?
But overall, yung hinintay din natin, the chairman's statement, di ba? With President Duterte being the chairman, anong assessment mo doon? May mga kulang pa rin daw.
It took a time. It took so long, no? Pero it's nothing unusual. If we are to get it from others who have covered previous ASEAN summits, medyo natagalan bago inailabas at may mga points nga as Clive had pointed out na may mga disappointments na hindi masyadong tinakil, particularly yung issue ng South China Sea na pinupush talaga natin dito sa Pilipinas.
Alright, so at least clear tayo doon. There were positives and may kulang din doon sa nangyari. That was of course in November. Up next, we're going to talk about something very close to everyone's hearts. That's traffic and transport. This is Rewind 2017, a CNN Philippines special presentation. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. This is Rewind 2017, a CNN Philippines special presentation.
And of course, we can't miss on this one. Two things to be discussed, traffic and transport.
Yes, at this time of the year, the holiday season, the traffic problems get worse.
It gets worse as, well, Christmas and New Year draws in. The paralyzing traffic, of course, plus other transport problems continue to pose a problem here in our country. And of course, it's a topic of conversation for all of us. In fact, it's something discussed almost on a daily basis.
Right.
So, let's bring in our motoring expert and, of course, our host here on CNN Philippines, James Deacon. James, hi.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hi. So when we talk about traffic and transport, we think about you.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm really kind of nervous about that.
No, actually, you know what I want to know is how would you evaluate how government has seemingly solved or not solved the problem of traffic here well, in Metro Manila?
All right. Firstly, just to cap off what you said about this becomes a topic of daily conversation. It's become like how people talk about the weather in other countries. It's just so, it's the first thing people do when they walk in the room is in the country they go, oh, isn't it cold outside here? It's traffic. You know? So it's on the top. That's why I started with that, because what I can't understand is it is the issue that affects everyone in the country.
But they're trying to do different.
They are. So how I would evaluate it is I think the government, the current administration under Secretary Tugade are doing wonderful things in the long term. I have to give them full credit for that. I see him working hard, his team working hard for the long term. So I see the work being done in the subways, the railways, the Clark expansion, decongesting Metro Manila. I applaud the administration for that, the current DOTR. You have my full support there. Where I see real big problems and no progress is the short to medium term. And what really frustrates me is that there are solutions out there. These are tried and proven solutions that can be just implemented like that. Actually, they don't even need to be implemented. They just don't need to be banned. Just don't ban them. That's all. These short to medium term solutions will not only help us get to those long-term solutions, but they complement them. So it's never going to expire. You're never going to say, this is going to replace that. No. Short to medium-term solutions that I talk about are ride-sharing, carpooling. These things are vital. This is the biggest source of congestion in any megacity, not just Manila or Cebu, worldwide, is the private car. So there's only one technical solution to this or potential solution to this, and that is ride-sharing, because you're just maximizing an efficient.
But we have a carpool lane now that they're testing.
Yeah.
That's what frustrates me. You have a carpool lane, and on the second day that the carpool lane was open, they came up with, the LTFRB came up with an announcement saying they're banning carpooling apps. How are people, what messages are you sending? It's mixed messages. We need to, you can't just open a lane. You need to come up with a program. I'm sorry if I'm sounding frustrated here, but because
you can't just say, we'll try this.
No, you have to back it up with a program. This is a carpool lane, how do you get there? This is how you get there, this is how you use it. Also, a carpool lane on an engineering standpoint, there's too many points of conflict along EDSA. So people, you're going to, at some point, if you're coming from Buendia, you're going to merge into the carpool lane. It's not that well thought out.
Okay.
Having said that, I do applaud the initiative and the principle of allocating space to high occupancy vehicles.
All right,
Yeah,
so that's
they
the
should be
carpool
In
lane.
principle.
Mas naiintindihan natin
Oo,
yun, yung carpooling.
Pero yung mga Uber and Grab, there was a big controversy.
Still is.
Temporarily stopped it.
Still
and then
is. You know, we had that Senate hearing in August 3. We thought we made a lot of room there, or a lot of headway there, but nothing's really been done. When you continue to cap off the supply, or you're limiting the supply, you're going to kill it off. And what's happening right now, people, I did a poll the other day and several thousand people answered on how their booking a ride has increased. It used to be 2 to 3 minutes.
Right, yeah.
Now it's I think the average is 23, 24 minutes. That's average.
And the surge as well.
And
price
you know,
surge.
but nobody's complaining about the surge except the government. The actual people
Because of
using
the
it are not
taxes.
complaining about the surge, because if you don't want the surge, you go to something else. Keep the surge. You know what? Let the surge go as high as people are willing to pay, because it's still an optional service. This is not a mass rail train system or anything like that. If people are willing to pay, you can't tell me what it's worth to me. If I have to catch a flight and it's a 10-time surge, it's still worth it for me. If I'm trying to get my wife to deliver a baby in hospital, right, she's not on the way yet.
But we need to discuss this, James. We need to discuss the MRT.
MRT.
Are there short-term solutions now that the maintenance provider is out?
My short-term solution for that would have been to give it to a private sector. I know it was being bid by the Metro Group and the Ayala Group, who run the LRT. I would
That's still open.
I would
That's
just
still
do that.
an
You know,
open option.
I mean, maybe I'm too simple in my thinking, but I would just palm off that problem to a private sector who you know has all the incentive to make it work. You know, we go to malls. There's a reason why the escalators work in malls, because if they don't, you'll go to another mall. But if it's a government sort of run facility, you got no choice. Put it back in their hands. Make demands of them. Give them the potential to make it a look at the LRT. It works very well.
Yeah.
Well, something to look forward to. At least you were talking about the long term. Something we've discussed with cabinet secretaries of the Duterte administration, how they're positive about the railways, about the subway, the kind of also moving people out of Metro Manila, for example, to go to Clark in order to decongest Metro Manila. But
Yes.
remember what the president said? He
Yeah.
said that Metro Manila will be a dead city.
You have to disperse the crowd, limit the factories at some time in the future, but not really mine, that would be too early. But about 10 years from now, they should close Manila and start to develop. Itong pinakamaganda ngayon eh.
You know, if they could do it. I mean, it's been done many times before around the world. They've moved the capital, and then the old capital becomes either heritage or a dead city. We don't want it to be a dead city, but we do want it to be a historical city at some point. New Clark City, fantastic plans there. Just to end, open up ride sharing, please. I cannot say it clearer enough. It is the only short to medium term solution that we have on the table that can be implemented like that.
Briefly, Angkas, the
Angkas. All right, great idea. Great topic there. Angkas. In a perfect world, I don't support the use of people using motorcycles as public transport. I think it's not a good idea, but it's happening. I also don't think, you know, having premarital sex is a good idea. You can't stop it though, right? So you may as well regulate it or put things around it that protect the people. So it's going to happen. What they did when they closed Angkas is they threw them all into the habal-habal. This is unregulated. So people are now riding without helmets. You got 5 people on a bike. You got people falling
That's
off.
something they really need to
That's
look
why.
into.
So it's not a
and
question.
even local government units should look into those.
The Mayor
those
Osmeña
issues,
flew in the other day. He made a fantastic pitch towards that, because he said, the people of Cebu pay my salary, not the LTFRB, so I'm listening to them. They're the ones hurting.
Right.
They're the ones who need the solution.
And there are pending bills in Congress to regulate and make that
And
legal.
it just needs to happen
motorcycle.
fast, because like I said, these are the short to medium term solutions.
All right.
Okay.
So up next, we're going to talk about the most beautiful women in the world. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It was a beautiful start to the year as the Philippines hosted for the 3rd time the Miss Universe Beauty Pageant, and Miss Universe 2015, our very own Pia Wurtzbach, turned over her crown to Miss Universe 2016, Iris Mitener.
And before the year was over, another Miss Universe was crowned, Demilie Nel-Peters of South Africa, and she recently visited the country also along with some other beauty queens.
I think one of the really great things you get to do is to travel the world and to see countries that you've never been to before. It's my first time in the Philippines, and I mean, it's been such a warm welcome. The people are so amazing, and to have my first trip in the Philippines as Miss Universe is really remarkable. So I can't wait to see which other countries I'll get to know better.
The girls also went around several tourist spots here in the country, like they were in Batanes and in Cebu. And also this year, the country won several beauty pageants, international beauty pageants. Joining us
You were on
is
a winning streak.
Yeah, pageant expert Norman Tino. And of course, James is still here.
James
And
still with us.
Norman, you were giving him a new title.
The pageant host discovery of the
Pageant host
year.
discovery.
After he hosted Miss Earth, everyone was talking about him, and always on a positive note, I might add.
Thank you. I was so nervous then.
Yeah, but well, maybe because you approached the whole pageant thing differently.
You know, I've never, to be honest, and I don't know if I'm going to get roasted for this, but I've never watched a pageant in my life. So maybe that's the reason
So this
why.
is a start for you.
Maybe that's the reason why I brought
Start
something
watching.
different
It's so
to it. But thank you. I was overwhelmed by the messages that were sent. And I did just try to do my own take on it without actually having a preconceived idea.
I want to go back to Miss Universe. Norman, you know, you are such an expert on this. 16, 10, Rachel Peters, and then we all just started to feel bad after not being called sa top 5. What happened?
Let's just put it this way. The judges preferred other girls over our Miss Philippines. So I've told this during previous interview with CNN also that we are a spoiled pageant nation. We want to win all the time, but we cannot. We cannot. We have to give other countries a chance to shine on the international stage. But we had our share of victories this year.
And triumphs,
Yeah. It may not be as big as Miss Universe, but well, we have Miss Earth.
Right.
We have
Yes,
Reina
Karen Basco.
Hispano-Americana. We just won Miss Tourism International in Malaysia. So these are victories that you just cannot take for granted because it proves to one and all that the Filipinos.
Pound for pound, are we the most winning nation? I'm not leading it, I'm
in Asia, yes.
Definitely in Asia.
But international, globally, that would be Venezuela.
Yeah.
Oh,
Venezuela is the lead.
Are we far behind that?
No, not really far behind. It's just that we are the Venezuela of Asia, as they would.
So what's with the Filipina beauty queens? Ano bang edge ng mga Pinay?
Preparation. It is.
It's really their coaches,
It's the preparation because at the end of the day, you send the most beautiful girls, and if they're not polished enough, if they're not trained enough, if they don't have the right attitude, then they won't excel. Like with Rachel, she stood out in Las Vegas, but of course,
Karen as well.
Sometimes they
Karen
say it's
too.
just not in the stars for you. Is that something you believe?
Some people, you know that somebody, a fortune teller actually predicted that South Africa will win Miss Universe this year. Very, very specific. And I didn't take it seriously at first, but towards the home stretch, I thought, oh my, I think South Africa's got the title in the bag because she's really very outstanding.
Getting a lot of, she was, her presence, especially during the latter part.
You should meet her in person. She's a luscious angel. She's an angel and very sexy.
And some of our the winning candidates like Win Marquez, she lost before.
She lost before in
yeah.
Binibining Pilipinas,
And
but it
Pia.
must be, Pia as well. Win's victory was more interesting because it was in Bolivia. It's the very first time that they allowed the Philippines to join a Latin-dominated competition. And we sent somebody who's a showbiz personality. And the organizers love girls who are more inclined towards showbiz. So when she knows how to play with the camera, play with the other candidates, and she won.
But let's talk about Karen Basco. Of course, she won. What was her edge there? Both of you?
Yeah, if you ask me, I think she really nailed it in the question and
and
answer
answer,
portion.
right.
She really just there, I think, leapfrogged a lot. Some people were feeling that she was trailing behind in some of the other areas.
Yeah.
Not that we really have access to that information, but then boom, when the Q&A came in, it was unanimous. It was like, she's good.
My God, during the final Q&A,
Australia
it's
was
so hard to ignore her answer. She was just...
And she wasn't up against people who, you know, it wasn't like because the others were not good. Australia had a really pretty good answer too. And she was half Filipina. And when she announced it right there, at that particular point, I even said, wow, nice strategy. I like your style because, of course, the stadium erupted. It's like, well, if she wins, we half win too, right? But she brought up, I think, the climate change, the biggest problem we face are people who believe it's not real.
And James mentioned Filipino fans. So what's it with the Filipino fans? Talagang sikat na sikat yung mga Pinoy. Sabi yung iba daw, they have Super Bowl, tayo daw, NBA, sa atin daw.
The Filipinos are the most
beauty pageants.
enthusiastic supporters ever. Nobody will beat the Filipinos in that regard.
I agree with you 1,000%. Because like I said, I haven't watched pageants before. So the first one I watched, I was the host of it. It felt like a rock concert in there. I've been to the MOA Arena before for concerts. And this was as wild as it gets. I've been there for fights. I've been there for so many different events. Monster trucks. This was where they were the loudest. I thought I thought the roof was going to blow off at one point.
What can we expect, though, in the next pageants, Norman?
This is how I wrapped up 2017. All our national beauty competitions, they have one title each already internationally, except for Binibining Pilipinas. So come January, Binibining Pilipinas will rest all its bets on the remaining girl who will compete in Egypt, Miss Intercontinental, and she should win that so that all our national organizations will have one winner each. And next year, somebody from the Miss Universe organization departed from NAIA, complete with one big bag of peach mango pies from somewhere, with a very cryptic message. I enjoyed my stay in the Philippines until blank that we see each other again.
All right. Norman, thank you so much.
You're
and
welcome.
James, thanks also. Thank you.
So there goes the beautiful and the ugly, the good and the bad. Just some of the stories that defined 2017. I'm Ruth Cabal.
And I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching CNN Philippines Rewind 2017.